Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about military courts today. Essentially, there's been a lot that has been said on the fact that they're draconian, the fact that it's unclear who it applies to, whether it's being the way that it's being applied at this time. We'll be going into the technicalities of what this means overall, the fact that the law existed for a very long time and has been used, its application and what it means in the current scenario. Of course, the post 9th May scenario that we have seen. Of course, we've also had statements from the Prime Minister and of course the Army Chief, all institutions essentially on a no tolerance policy as far as terrorism is concerned, as far as destroying military installations is concerned. The kind of terrorism we saw, the kind of violence we saw on May 9th, how this affects essentially this law that has existed for a very long time, and whether it's as controversial as it's being made out to be at all. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Hafiz Ahsaan Ahmad, who's Advocate Supreme Court. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Barrister Safiullah, Ghauri, who's also a legal expert. Thank you for being with us today. We have with us Rashid from the PPP. Thank you for joining us. Hafiz, like I was earlier saying, there's a lot that is being said, on the nature of the military courts, first of all, and the fact that whether they're actually as controversial as this law is being made out to sound, as far as the overall scenario post 9th May is concerned. Yeah. What's your take on this?
Thank you so much for inviting. Nowadays, this is a very constitutional and legal debate is going on in Pakistan. What is the fate of the military court in Pakistan? What are the cases to be tried by the military courts? Whether the composition of the military courts is illegal or constitutional, or it is illegal or unconstitutional. But the law is very much clear. Before the partition, there was a military act by the British rulers, and it was 1911 Military Act. And then after the partition independence, we promulgated the 1952 Military Act. Then we have the Pakistan Air Force Act 1953. And then we have the 1961 Pakistan Navy Ordinance. When the Army Act was promulgated, there was no exception to try the civilians under the Military Act. But in 1967, the amendment was made through Defence of Services Pakistan Ordinance number 3 and 4, which provided the amended in section 2D Roman 1 and 2 in Pakistan Army Act, which provides the exception that in addition to the military employees or the people who attach with the military organizations, the civilians can be tried on two conditions. One, if it is involved with the military men on any activity relating to the national security. And the second was the first time the Official Secret Act 1923 was made part of the Pakistan Army Act 1952. So these two amendments made in 1967 were first challenged in Peshawar High Court, and the Peshawar High Court decided that in favor of these amendments. Then the matter was brought to the Lahore High Court, and Lahore High Court again validated the amendments, and finally the matter went to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. The first two times the matter was decided especially by the Peshawar High Court under 1962 Constitution, but when the matter brought to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, the matter was decided under 1973 Constitution. So the Supreme Court of Pakistan, the bench comprises of 5 members bench headed by the Chief Justice
the
of
history
Pakistan.
Of it, right? The overall, of course, that's there for us, like you've explained it very well. I'll come back to you. Let me go to Barrister Safiullah also. Safiullah, there's criticism that there is, the power to pick and choose cases as far as, trial by members of the armed forces is a power that is, unilateral. It is a power that is perhaps, without checks and balances. How would you?
Right. So, Mahrukh, that's not the case. Right now, the section 2D 1 and 2 is being debated hotly in the Supreme Court, and that's in fact the primary issue. Nobody is contesting the fact that military courts have not been constituted legally. That's not an issue. The power to pick and choose is not not really the problem here either. It is the manner, the process by which they are being chosen is what the problem is. The simple question that has been asked by the lawyers from the civil society and by Jawad Khwaja's lawyer is, how do we know? Like 106 people are right now under trial in the military courts. Some of them are in the ATC, some of them are undergoing just standard police trials, criminal court trials. What's the differentiation mechanism? And of course the court has asked for replies, but if I was to presume, and this is based on the case laws that have developed, this is based on the history of the Pakistan Army Act, by the plethora of cases, many big cases that define where civilians can be tried under the army courts. I think it will come down to either geofencing, people who committed crimes within the Lahore cantonment. That gives the army ample jurisdiction over them. Or if you could prove that they in any manner were conspiring with military officials, that's also there's also a long list of cases that upheld the idea of causing sedation in I apologize, sedation amongst the ranks of armed forces in the Mushtaq Ahmad case and the Brigadier F.B. Ali case. So we know that, you know, in cases where you try and lure the armed forces away from what their duty is, you could. In the case of PTI, we have hundreds and thousands of people who marched into the cantonments. If some of them have been picked up, that's probably well within the jurisdiction. Maybe they were attacking the corps commander's house.
So
we don't know.
What entails, what comes within the ambit, I think is the right way to put forward this question, that if they are within the domain, if they are within, you know, the area.
The territorial jurisdiction, either they should be in the territorial jurisdiction, that's one way of looking at it, because that's a clear jurisdiction of the military courts. Or if they're not in the territorial jurisdiction, then any evidence that connects them to sedation of any members of the armed forces. And once again, we have people from PTI who were writing open tweets and actively calling out for mutiny against the senior ranks of the military. So that shouldn't be much of a problem either. I think 106 is a fairly low number. They've probably seen people who had aggravated offences in the 106.
Let me come back to you. Safiullah, we have with us Irfan Qadir, who's a Special Assistant to PM on Accountability. Irfan Saab, overall, as far as the military courts are concerned, it's a subject which is receiving considerable criticism. The government is, you know, under fire, so to speak, for these, as far as application of law as post 9th May. As far as the military courts are concerned, why go down that route, particularly post 9th May? Irfan Saab, can you hear us? Hello? I think there's a problem with audio. Ali, can you hear me? Ali, the same question from you. I don't know if you were following, but there is, you know, considerable criticism at this time as far as the military courts are concerned. There is also, an attempt to perhaps, I would say, even mislead on certain issues as far as, you know, the propaganda surrounding the military courts are concerned. Certainly, you know, legally speaking, they've been there for a long time. This is a law that has existed for since, correct me if I'm wrong, Hafiz Saab, since 1967. So why does the government feel compelled to go down that route?
Thank you so much. Mahrukh, I feel the Army Act and the courts which we are talking about at this point in time have always been there. And if you see post the May 9 incidents, the kind of incidents that actually took place with where the army installations got attacked, where the corps commander's house was barged in, the Jinnah house was burned down, different things were set on fire, blaze all over the country. And it also turned out it was when we investigated, when we got deeper into the investigations, it turned out it was by design. There were call logs, CDRs, audio recordings. So it was not something which happened by chance and at the heat of the moment. It was pre-planned and all by design, that this is what needed to be carried out, and military courts are there, the Military Act is there, and civilians can be tried. In fact, the current Chief Justice uh, recently in the hearings today actually said that yes, civilians can be tried in the Army Act. There's nothing wrong with that. If they do act, I mean, if somebody is going attacking military and army installations, what will you try them under? Traffic law acts or traffic acts? Obviously not. Military acts, right? And that being said, it's very selective and it's with evidence. It's not that people have been randomly been picked up or charged. We have state-of-the-art technology in this day and age, and a lot of the geofencing is there. A lot of people were foolish enough not just to attack such an installation, but also make videos while doing so. And that evidence is present. So I feel that whatever is happening should happen. And
Let me come back to you.
yeah.
I'm going to go to Irfan Kadir Saab. Irfan Saab, can you hear me?
Ji, I can hear you.
Ji, Irfan Saab, it is being said, and I think I'm quoting from the judgment, that this power vesting in the federal government to pick and choose cases for trial by members of the armed forces further violates the equality requirement stipulated in Article 25 of the Constitution. How would you respond to this? This is generally something that is, now being talked about. It's a criticism, of course, that is, this pick and choose question that is going to invariably, be up to, of course, the presiding officer, as I understand.
This question is legally irrelevant because there is no specific instance of pick and choose.
Okay.
The Supreme Court is simply presupposing that there has been pick and choose, and such questions should be discouraged, and the government should tell the Supreme Court, please tell us that which are the cases where there was any pick and choose. And this kind of question, that presupposing that there is some pick and choose and putting somebody to explanation, judges don't ask such questions. These questions are considered to be legally irrelevant questions.
But in this, of course, we've also had statements by, for example, Rana Sanaullah Saab saying that the former Prime Minister Imran Khan Saab will also be tried under military courts. There is, a lot of criticism attributed to him being tried under the courts. Why is it? Is this going to be? Is this a system of justice? Is this that has not existed? Of course, we've been talking about the fact that this military courts have existed since 1963, as I recall. 67. Sorry, and for them to come under fire at this time, post 9th May. Why is this becoming such a huge issue at this time? Because the number of people are of course, so large, the propaganda surrounding this issue. How would you answer that?
You see, regardless of sentiment and regardless of emotionalism which many people have for Mr. Imran Khan, the case is to be looked into on the basis of its own facts. And such an incident has never taken place, notwithstanding all the political differences between a particular political party and state institutions, including the armed forces of Pakistan. These differences can arise, but you do not start ransacking the properties of the Supreme Court or of the armed forces, or you get into the house of the corps commander, or you start entering into the GHQ and other army installations and damaging their vehicles and putting on fire the properties belonging to the armed forces of Pakistan, and doing all these things in the areas which belong to the armed forces, which belong to cantonment. So in these circumstances, obviously, Army Act has been applied in the past. It will again be applied. And there have been cases in the past where civilians were tried, and nobody ever raised an eyebrow that these civilians were tried in violation of fundamental rights enshrined by the Constitution. Such right is not enshrined by the Constitution. On the other hand, if we look at the procedure of the Army Act, the court-martial, the procedure is very simple, straightforward. And the procedure is that in court-martial, a trial takes place. In trial, the accused has a right to a lawyer, and then there is an appeal provided in the Army Act. And then after the appeal, the clemency can also go to the President of Pakistan. All these stages, this is a part of fair trial process, which is enshrined in a law which has been there since 1952. On the other hand, Supreme Court has passed number of orders in the last 10 years where the person against whom the order was passed was never heard. He was not a party to the proceedings, and thousands of people were removed from their positions without following these basic necessary ingredients of fundamental rights. And those people were left remediless, and to provide remedy to those people, two new laws have been legislated. One is the Practice and the Procedure Act, and the other is the Supreme Court Review and Judgment Orders Act of 2023. And that was to provide remedy to these people who did not have those basic legal safeguards which are available to a rapist, which are available to a terrorist, which are available to the worst form of a murderer, a dacoit. But those people who got into Supreme Court's 184.3 so-called antenna, they had to suffer like this. And now that they have been provided with those remedies, suddenly Supreme Court has now come to the rescue on certain figment of certain people's imagination, which is the backbone of the petitions that have been filed. And one petition pertains to a former Chief Justice of Pakistan, Jawad Khaja. And Jawad Khaja single-handedly has violated the Constitution of Pakistan and has trampled over the fundamental rights of people of Pakistan far more than any military court can do, because he was a part of that bench that he took a PCO oath himself, and he removed those judges who took constitutional oath. This is just, I am giving you the tip of the iceberg.
There is, regardless of that, of course, we also have a statement from Khwaja Asif at this time that the petition itself seems politically motivated. It seems that you agree with that also?
It is not politically motivated. This petition, more than political motivated, is not about public interest. It is about vested interest of few, because their near ones and their dear ones are involved in these cases. So they, instead of going through proper channels, they want that somehow the trial doesn't take place against them, and they want to frustrate these proceedings, and that is why they have come before the Chief Justice, and Chief Justice has constituted a bench illegally. He has no authority under the law, no mandate under the law to constitute a bench in isolation, because the law which is now in force in Pakistan is that every bench is now to be constituted by the Chief Justice in consultation with two senior judges. All three of them together have to constitute a bench. And that is why the Chief Justice designate took exception to this. And that was perhaps the last straw on the camel's back. And he got so fed up that he had to stand up to tell the Chief Justice that please stop violating the law.
But Irfan Sahab, at this time, we are looking at judiciary at this time. We saw what happened with Justice Qazi Faizi Sir as far as this bench was concerned. We see largely that there seems to be the kind of relationship, unfortunately, that exists between the highest court of the land and even the government at this time. Of course, one would want there to be, at least in theory, a kind of separation of powers. One would want there to be, perhaps a better system to prevail. Are we ever going to go forward? Are we going to move towards that kind of, perhaps style of governance, or do you see more discord in the future?
I totally agree with you. You are absolutely right that in any developing democracy or any democracy in the developing world or the developed world, such differences do not take place. But we have seen such differences taking place not only between the courts and the government, but even within the judges there are serious differences. And I would say that yes, in the coming days, these differences have to be resolved and these issues need to be solved. And that is the need of the time. And I am quite hopeful, because I am an optimist, and I am hopeful that in the coming days, when the next parliament takes over and when they sit inside the assemblies, they will bring in new laws, they'll bring in constitutional amendments, and the present judiciary will also be reconstituted, and many of the good judges will be retained, and those who are not up to the mark will have to be replaced by the new ones.
You don't expect to enjoy a good relationship with the current makeup of the Supreme Court, it seems.
So sorry, I did not follow. I couldn't hear that. Can you?
I'm saying that it seems that the government doesn't expect to enjoy a good relationship with the current makeup of the Supreme Court.
No, that's not the case, because government stands with the Supreme Court even today. Government is only against few judges who are themselves pitched against the Supreme Court.
Right, fair enough. Thank you so much for your time, Irfan Saab. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Hafiz Saab, you heard what Irfan Saab is saying. Of course, you know, like I said, the kind of situation that unfortunately exists at this time is not really, you know, good in terms of the overall legal process is concerned, in terms of the kind of signal it's sending out to those who want to come to court for even normal cases. And we've spoken about this also.
We are here now only to discuss the issue of the military courts in Pakistan, and the matter is pending before the Supreme Court of Pakistan. There is two aspects. One is the working relationship with the government through Attorney General with the Supreme Court of Pakistan. It is altogether a different subject. But now we are here whether the Military Act is applied to the civilians. Yes, the Military Act is applied to the civilians. Second, whether there are some judgments of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Yes, there are certain judgments of Supreme Court of Pakistan starts from 1975 up to 2021 of this last 2 years. The third one is whether the Supreme Court uphold the amendments made in 1967. Yes, the Supreme Court uphold the amendment and validated these two provisions. Whether the Supreme Court has decided about the 21st Constitutional Amendment on the certain broad lines, that first, that the trial by the civilian under Military Court Act is not against the fundamental rights. Number two, there is no new offence in Military Act. Number three, whether there is a due process of law is not to be required. Yes, they are saying that the trial being held under the military supervision or by the military judge is not against the due process of law, and that judgment was made even after the 10A was made after in the 18th Constitutional Amendment. Now the issue of the Supreme Court would be, and most importantly, the one point is missing, that when you file a petition before the Supreme Court or High Court, normally we are challenging on the violations of the fundamental rights, and the Article 8 of the Constitution is very important for this very purposes. There are certain other articles as well, like Article 4, Article 9, Article 25, but the most important article is the Article 27, which says that if the law is inconsistent in derogation against the fundamental rights, so it can be challenged before the Supreme Court of Pakistan or the higher judiciary under Article 199 of the Constitution. But here the Constitution itself provides an exception in Article 8 to B, which says that the laws or the acts which are in Schedule 4 of the Part 1 of the Constitution, they cannot be challenged under Article 8 of the Constitution. So there is a constitutional protection as well, that these laws cannot be changed, and some of the laws relating to the land reforms in Pakistan. But most important for this aspect is the Army Act 1952, the Pakistan Air Force Act, the Navy Ordinance. It is part of the fourth schedule of the Part 1 of the Constitution. So there would be another big issue before the court about the maintainability of the petition and the locus standi of the people who are filing over there. The second important thing would be, if there are certain observations today by the Supreme Court of Pakistan that yes, the Military Act provides provision to try the civilians under the Military Act 1952, but there are certain areas which needs to be
clarification, you're saying
needs to be structured a discretion. But now the law is very much clear. The structure is Section 73 and Section 91 and Section 94 of the Military Act clearly explains that if someone, a civilian who is not part of the military establishment, involved in an offence in Section 2D or in the 59 of the Military Act, so the determination of the authority lies through the investigation with the commanding officer. He will move an application to the concerned judge and ask for the delivery, or you can say the custody of the accused, and then the trial is going on. So there is no issue to the extent about the law. The law is very much clear, but now after 9th of May, there are so many people involved over there, and the controversy starts over there about the pick and choose. So that would be might be
civilians themselves.
Yeah.
Hafiz Sahab, I'm going to go to Safiullah also on this. But overall, as far as civilians,
Yeah.
one or two, like you yourself have said, this was a case of a large number of people.
Yeah.
And for them to be tried.
No, if a single accused commits something, he is also responsible, and if they are more than one, so the strength of the accused, the number of the accused doesn't matter on that.
Right,
and the second, this is not a new one. In almost 36 countries all over the world, like the developing and our neighbors, they are trying the civilians, and this has not been even the question before the Supreme Court of Pakistan whether the civilians can be tried or not.
They've said that
so it is a settled law, and there is a judgment of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and all these judgments have been touched upon the fundamental rights and the basic structure of the Constitution.
Fair enough. Safiullah, the question, okay, leaving the legality of it on one side, I think Hafiz Sahab explained it very succinctly. He's gone into some detail. The signal that it sends out overall, as far as the political realm, so to speak, is concerned. Of course, on the one hand, it has to be done, because like whatever was happened is unprecedented, and there is one clear stance that justice has to, in this case, be established. This cannot be repeated under any circumstances. But overall, and in this kind of a background where we, like I asked Irfan Sahab also, we see the kind of discord at this time between the Supreme Court and the government, so to speak.
So, Mahrukh, what is the signal that we are concerned about? We have in the past seen that the Balochistan Liberation Army attacked Jinnah House in Ziyarat. They were tried under the military courts. Nobody batted an eye. Nobody had a problem with that. That is consistent with the Pakistani legal system, and so it was done. We have seen that the Tehreek-e-Taliban attacked military installations, including the GHQ. They were tried, and once again, there was no problems. So, is the real reason the fact that an equal amount of violence was committed, or the fact that it was committed by a large number of people, or a party that has a good presence on Twitter? We have to first understand why are we discriminating against previous offences by other organizations like BLA and TTP versus what's happening with PTI right now. And I think if we were to look at it objectively, because the law is to be applied equally to everyone, we should expect that the PTI should fall into the same ambit. And if they were different,
then it should be the party that should invariably be banned or whatever.
I think it has been hinted that if this was done on a party level, then that is something that would happen. Rana Sanaullah has spoken about it many times. That is obviously something that is on the table. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. We have to see what the involvement of the entire political party was, or whether this was an act of certain individuals. But the signaling aspect of it is something that confounds me, and it's actually quite funny. Today we had a joint communique by the US and India, which is urging Pakistan to carry out the trials of its terrorist outfits, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and whatnot. And it is the same people who on the one hand ask us to carry out trials which will no doubt be military trials. Nobody is going to take an important terrorist leader into a civilian court. This is going to be a military court. And at the same time, they urge Pakistan to follow civilian methods and methods of judicial democratic principles that have been established by them. We need to keep in mind that Pakistan, like Hafiz Sahab said, is a country which is a security state, which has suffered very serious security issues, and there are countries all over the world, close to 40 countries, that carry out military trials, and nobody sees that as an issue. The reason why nobody sees that as an issue is because they understand that some countries need to prioritize their security, and when Pakistan does so, I find it very convenient that we see
that as a human rights issue.
As a human rights issue, how people manage to turn it around and start advising Pakistan on how to run its own affairs. I think Pakistan has managed to run its own affairs quite well. It is through these military trials that we have managed to largely get rid of the menace of terrorism. And it is through these military trials that I hope that we will be able to at least rein in the rogue political elements within Pakistan that turn to street power and terrorism whenever they want to.
Let me go to Ali. I think he's been very patient. Ali, can you hear me? Thank you so much for staying with us. Ali, overall, as far as the situation at this time is concerned, we've also had statements from Rana Sanaullah saying that, that it seems and that the former Prime Minister may be disqualified. If that does happen, he said that the party would then be run by Shah Mahmood Qureshi, whatever shape the PTI is under, whatever shape it forms. Overall, of course, we're looking at elections very close now. What is the I mean, are you confident as far as the party positions are concerned? If the former Prime Minister's party, Tehreek-e-Insaf, is not banned, how do you think it's going to fare as far as the political realm is concerned? What kind of a overall effect do you expect?
I believe that it's become, with time, I think as time passes by, it's becoming very evident that PTI is losing its popularity. And you can imagine if senior leaders who are part of PTI are now leaving PTI due to the policies or due to the May 9th incident or the past performance or the attitude of, the PTI chairman in the past. And it will just make things worse when he's disqualified. And from what I understand, that a lot of people are not very fond of Shah Mahmood Qureshi running the party, and there are already divides in the party. And certain different groups there's a forward bloc within the party. I'm not talking about the people who have left the party, but even within the party, existing PTI, whatever little is left, people are not happy with each other. So I don't see a bright future for them, and rightfully so. They have not. They were in the government for the past 4 years, and they did nothing but complain, and they brought Pakistan to a brink of default, which the current government is trying to evade, and it's trying to put things back on track. So I think a lot of people, there's a lot of awareness now, and even in general circles, a lot of PTI supporters who used to be staunch supporters of PTI and Mr. Khan are now just really disheartened with his behavior, with the party's behavior.
But there is also, Ali, we saw, there seemed to be, I mean, things were not certain, what can one call it, as far as the PPP and the PMLN is concerned? Have things settled? Because, of course, and recently we also saw some disagreements there between, within the PDM also.
Absolutely. You see, the beauty of democracy, Mahrukh, is that you have to agree to disagree. We are two different political parties, and there are several other, I'm talking about PMLN and PPP. So we do have difference of opinion. We may be partners in PDM, but we may have different perspectives or views on different things, and we may have disagreements. And but what is nice, in my opinion, is that we resolve whatever issues we have. We come to the table, we discuss it, and we resolve it. And we have resolved a lot of issues, and we're resolving even more. But when it comes to elections, it'll be each party on its own, and we'll fight elections. And whatever the issues are, I mean, this is nothing alarming, because, I mean, in democracy, parties do disagree. In fact, within parties, people disagree. So that is nothing new, and that is nothing alarming. So everything's fine, and I think PDM is intact, and things look good in the coming elections.
Let me come back to you, Ali. Hafiz, moving on a little towards the political side also. The elections are very close. Of course, the government also is grappling with economic issues, and they've made no secret about it. We've seen the Prime Minister in Paris today, talking to the IMF head also, the IDB. There is, constant effort being made as far as on the economy front. In this kind of a scenario, what shape do you expect the elections, for example, to take? We've also seen Ali saying that, each party for its own. You know, what is your overall assessment of how things will pan out?
Since for the last 1 year we have seen unprecedented political or constitutional or legal things are being happened in Pakistan, and these controversies have resolved not by the politicians and in parliament, outside the parliament, and that makes the crisis for Pakistan both in economic side and political instability side. So the most important thing would be for all the political parties to sit together, have a consensus agenda on the governance, election, economy, and most importantly the justice system in Pakistan. If we will not address these issues going to the election, election is not the solution. Election is the way to elect your democratic people to sit in the parliament. But if this political instability continues from this for the last, even from 2014 to onward, we had seen the dharna in D Chowk, then there was the slogans against the rigged government, then when the PTI came, it was selected government. Now the other side is saying that it is the important. This is not I mean the interest of the country. We have 250 million populations. There are so many issues in Pakistan, the poverty issue, the education issue, the employment issue. So until we have a system under the under 1973 constitution, and the system is that there will be a democracy in Pakistan, there will be the election elected by the people of Pakistan, they will serve for the 5 years. So for the moving on, this is the important for all the political parties, the political leaders sit together, decide certain issues, and then go to the election. If we will not decide this is going to the election, the political instability would continue, and this is not in the interest of our country, and especially for the people of Pakistan.
Safiullah, we've, over time been talking about judicial reform. We've been talking about also economic reform. We've been talking about economic charter and the fact that you saw what Ali said, each party being on its own, but also we've seen, successfully, so to speak, as far as for the last more than a year now, I think nearly 2 years it's going to be, as far as the PDM is concerned. For them to coexist like this, isn't this, in your opinion, perhaps a good news for the kind of economic charter that invariably Pakistan needs at this time, the kind of judicial reform that needs there to be political accord across the board, with all political parties?
Right, it's not just, I think judicial reforms need to be not there only for political stability, but they are also imperative for economic stability. Right now we see that our apex court seems to be embroiled in only what you would see as a political battle, whereas there are many other economic battles that plaintiffs are facing on a daily basis. Big companies and their massive issues, payments that need to be made, commercial issues that are absolutely imperative for investments into Pakistan. Pakistan is seeing a record divestment, investors leaving Pakistan. I remember just maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, Mahrukh was fantastic. I used to think that Pakistan is going to become one of the next Asian tigers, because there were so many companies coming into Pakistan, new tech companies and all sorts of different banking and automobile industries that were being set up, and Pakistan was being called the final frontier of the venture capitalists. That's the kind of headlines I remember.
5 years ago.
Sorry? 5
years ago.
Roughly 5 years ago. That's that's when things were really
before we
looking
had
up.
the last election.
Right after we had the last, before and afterwards, it was continuing. I think it's after maybe like 1 year of the PTI government that people started losing interest. And then of course there was the $58 billion investment from China. Now what's the problem? Why, for instance, has CPEC, which is the most important thing, Pakistan is trying to get a $1.3 billion loan from IMF right now. There is a $52 billion China railway project that is just sitting. 52 billion, there is no comparison between the kind of amounts that we're talking about. Why is that not happening? It's not happening because China Railway points out at the kind of treatment that Pakistan has meted out to all the other projects that have taken place, like the Diamond Bhasha Dam, Neelam Jhelum project. None of these projects took off. All of these projects are currently in the courts. Why are they in the courts? Why are the courts not giving any judgments? Because the courts are too busy trying to figure out what Imran Khan wants. And that's what the reality of the matter is. Some of the most important issues in the country are being swept under the rug. Our circular debt has grown by 13,000% in the last 10 years. All of these things continue to happen because the courts allow them to happen.
But then if Safiullah, the argument that the courts, of course, at this time there are you know, some 100,000s, I think, cases. You would probably know, perhaps the statistics better than I do, that, there are people who are waiting justice.
So that's precisely my point. If the courts started thinking less about what is going on in the realm of politics and started concentrating more on normal day-to-day issues that people face, normal suits of recoveries, normal suits of specific performance.
People are going to court.
If that's precisely my point. So here's what we see. Here's what an ordinary person sees. An ordinary person who comes to me as a lawyer, for instance, he feels and he knows that there is going to be no hearing that he will get for the next 1 year, maybe. Maybe if somebody gets a stay today, I concluded a case that I had filed on behalf of one of the biggest Chinese state-owned companies. This case concluded after 6 years. One of the biggest investments, and I've just mentioned some of the big names. This was one of them.
Unfortunately,
and this is what we see. Why is it that they are not getting the same standard of hearing that Imran Khan gets? He files a case, day-to-day hearings every day. Why does he get preference then? Put him in the same line as everybody else, and then I think things will sort themselves out.
Fair enough. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Hafiz Ahsaan Ahmad, Khokhar Sahab, thank you for joining us.
I would like to add only one line. The one line is that this is a serious issue in Pakistan about the military courts. So it would be more appropriate for the Supreme Court of Pakistan to have a full court, because earlier the judgment was made by the 11-member bench in the 21st Constitutional Amendment and decided the certain principles of the constitutional law. So it would be more appropriate for the Supreme Court of Pakistan to have more than the 11 judges and to decide in accordance with law and constitution by having the earlier precedent of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. So that should be acceptable for all the people and institution in Pakistan.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for being with us. Hafiz Sahab, thank you for joining us. Barrister Safiullah, Ghauri, thank you for being with us. Irfan Qadir Sahab, thank you for joining us. Ali Rashid, thank you so much for your time. Overall, of course, as far as the situation stands today, there are certain, there are a plethora of really integral issues to Pakistan that are currently pending, and of course I would say one of the most important being that there should be across the board agreement as far as economic charter is concerned, as far as judicial reform is concerned, because those things, those issues are what's going to change Pakistan for the future. Those are the kind of changes that people want to see. Of course, we're very close to the elections. Of course, this is going to be, it seems like, a changing environment at this time, with the term just ending as far as these current political parties are concerned. But let's hope that we can move towards a resolution of those issues that are integral to the problems this country faces today. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.